Hi, I'm Megan, Savers with Follow the Beater, and today we're going to make a double wrapped leather bracelet with Swarovski Crystal Pearls. These instructions are designed for a wrap bracelet that fits twice comfortably around a common 7-inch wrist. So keep that in mind if your wrist is quite a bit smaller or quite a bit larger, as you may have to adjust the counts and the lengths. For today's project, you will need one standard size clipboard. I prefer the kind that has this sort of wiry catch on it, but there's nothing wrong with a solid one. One clip that's going to easily fit over the bottom of your clipboard. No need to get fancy. This is a potato chip clip that I got out of the kitchen. 44 inches of 1.5 to 3 millimeter leather cord. I've chosen the 2 millimeter size, and this color is called natural gray, though you can see it's actually a color of brown. About 55 6 millimeter beads. I've chosen the Swarovski Crystal Pearls in the color Peridot. 2 3 millimeter and 2 4 millimeter beads in a color that matches or contrasts with your project. In this case, they are for a more gradual size increase at the beginning and end of the project. A button of your choice, as long as it's above about 12 millimeter, you should be fine. I prefer these back shank style buttons, though there's nothing wrong with using a button that has 2 or 4 holes as long as your leather fits through it. In this particular case, I had a pretty specific colors that I wanted to match, so I actually got one of these glue-in clasps that has a back shank, and then I glued in my own beads. So that's always an option if you have something special you need to match. Any thick stringing thread is going to work out great. This happens to be a vintage Gudebroad Brothers silk buttonhole thread in a size D. This is the color Walnut, but any of your macrame type cords would also work. A Thread Heaven or other preferred thread conditioner, just for glide and to keep your thread from fraying as much. Sharp or beading needles that are going to fit your thread. In this case, I've chosen the John James size 8 sharps. They are a little shorter than the beading needles, but they have a very solid shaft, and the hole is the same size as the shaft, so I find them interchangeable with beading needles in this particular case. GS Hypo Cement. It has the extreme precision tip, as you can see, so that you can really get in there to secure your threads. Scissors that cut your thread and or your leather. You're probably going to have to cut a little bit off of the end. And a pair of pliers to help you secure your knots. Begin by threading your chosen button into the very center of your leather cord. And then we're going to tie an overhand knot. So literally just under, round and through, and then snug your knot up pretty close to the back of the shank, but don't tighten it too much yet because we're about to tie in our actual stringing thread, and if it's a really tight knot at this point, it makes it a little difficult to tie in, so leave that for just a second. Using 8 feet of thread, I know it sounds like a lot, but it's better to have a little more than a little less. You're going to thread your needle a single thickness and condition with your Thread Heaven. seeing where your cord actually comes out of the knot. Kind of trace that specific cord, which is here, and I want you to go around that cord with your needle, pull it up, and then leaving a little bit of thread, I want you to tie a knot, then knot again, and if you like, you can go around a couple times, knot a third time, pull that very tight, pick up your GS Hypo cement, dab your knot, just give it a little dab, leave your tail, leave it to dry for just a few seconds, get rid of any stringies if you've had that problem. And then following the cord that you've tied to, go down through the bottom knot, pull up your thread, kind of pull up the knot, move it a little closer if you need to. Put your needle down, pick up your pliers, and push up your knot tight, as tight as you can, and you'll feel it get tighter. And if you need to, you can kind of pull apart and tighten this way as well, until you feel that it's really secure on there and your button shouldn't really be floating around too terribly much. Now you can clip off your little end. I've just left the tiniest little end in there, and it won't be noticeable at all once we get started. Using your clipboard, I want you to arrange your project so that your two leather cords are parallel and your stringing thread, your working thread, is off to your left. And I want you to just put your button up in there. As you can see, I'm kind of right up where the shaft is. And then I want you to pull your two cords relatively taut and clip your potato chip clip on there. Now these should be relatively straight and pretty much the same length. You should maybe be able to get a finger up underneath them, but that's about it. Zoom in here so that you can see what I'm doing. Now we're going to kind of wind our thread around in a figure-8 motion. And we're going to do this a few times before we actually add any beads so that you can get used to the cadence of it. So in this case, my thread is off to the left, and I'm going to pass under with my needle just under the cord on the right, and I'm going to pull up. Sorry, I got a little knot in my cord there. And you want it to be as close, flush up against the knot as possible. And that is one pass. Now from here I'm going to go under the left hand and pull up. Again, very close to the knot. That's the second pass, and third, again, underneath just the right hand. Right underneath the last one. Under the left hand. And if you need to push them up a little bit, you certainly can. I'm going to make one more full pass, so under the right. Right under that, and under the left. Should go right underneath that one. And now we're ready to start adding our beads. Taking one of your 3mm beads, you're going to string it and push it most of the way down to your work. And you're going to go under the right hand with just your needle. Gently pull that up, and your bead may naturally fall in underneath, as mine just did. If you kind of put a finger up under there to keep it from falling, I want you to pass through the bead that's going to secure it in place, and then I want you to pass under just the left hand side. Careful not to get caught on your button. And then push that up there. And that has secured our 3mm bead in place. I want you to string one of your 4mm beads. Slide it mostly down there. Again, with your finger underneath. I want you to go under just the right. Pass through the bead. And under just the left. Push that up there if you need to. Now we've graduated through 3 and 4 millimeter, so it's time to start adding our 6 millimeter pearl. So string that, take it down, pass under the right, through the bead, and under the left. Snug that up if you need to. I'm going to go through a couple more stitches so that you can just sort of see it. Thread your bead, go under just the right, as you pull up, get your bead in the center there, and if you can go through your bead and under the left at the same time, that's perfectly acceptable, and you'll probably end up doing that as you get comfortable with adding your beads. Just make sure your thread is pretty snug in there. You don't want your bead to float around too much. Now, as you work along, you might find that you get down far enough and that you really are having a harder time as it's getting in closer to you. So in that particular case, you need to just unclip the bottom, open up and move up your work. Mine's kind of in between a couple beads, if you can see that. And then pull taut, relatively taut, and clip and continue until you've added all of your 6mm beads, and then you'll add a 4mm bead and a 3mm bead to the end. Once you have added the entirety of your 6mm beads and then subsequently a 4mm and 3mm bead, we're ready to tie our thread off. We're going to do the weave in and out pattern much like we did at the very beginning. We're just going to go under the right, pull tight, under the left, pull tight, and again right, and left, each one going underneath the next and pulling it together, right, and left, and now you can tie off by passing under one of the threads above, pulling up. Once you get that loop there, you want to make sure to pull that tight and go through it. Tighten it right up there. And repeat that. Going under. Pull up until you get this thread. Go through it. And you can do that 2 or 3 times. It's a matter of your personal comfort level. Dab that with a little of the GS Hypo Cement. Set that aside for a moment to dry. Then you're going to clip your thread pretty close. Extract your bracelet from the clipboard. And I want you to tie an overhand knot over, around, and through. And snug that up. You'll mostly cover the weaving pattern that we did at the end. And you can pull these two tight. Use your pliers to tighten your knot. Once you have your first knot tied, it's time to have a look at the button clasp. And you really kind of want to put it in there, snug it up to the knot, if it helps to look at the back, right? And really gauge about where it ends on the side that's your free end. Then, kind of keeping that place in mind, you want to perform another overhand knot. And then have a look to see if you think it's going to easily come in and out. So just clasp it and unclasp it a couple times. Looks like I got this one pretty close. So then you want to just make sure that your knot is good and tight. And use your various methods to obtain that. Then you're just going to clip off pretty close. You could probably clip it a little closer if you're comfortable with it. And that should be that. You're done. Make one in every color.